John McClain, Hall of Fame columnist, joins us, 365 Sports. John, thank you so much. Every Tuesday around 5:30 with us on 365 Sports. Do you think Aaron Rodgers is going to play again this year?
I don't. I think he likes the attention. Why would he come back and play behind maybe the worst offensive line in the NFL? Zach Wilson's mobile, and I know Rodgers has experience at avoiding a pass rush, but what would be the point? They're not a good team. Their offense is terrible. Their defense is good. Their running game is inconsistent, but their line is terrible. Why, if they're out of the playoff race, why in the world would you bring him back when he's not 100%?
John, is Bill Belichick on the hot seat?
Oh, he's been on the hot seat, Paul. People told me at the Combine, who covered the team for years, Robert Kraft is not happy with what's happened to the franchise. Kraft wanted Bill O'Brien back. Bill Belichick said okay. They thought O'Brien could come back and straighten out Mac Jones, and it hadn't happened. As somebody wrote the other day, there was no such thing as the Patriot way. It was the Brady way. And now that Brady's gone, everything about the Patriot way is being exposed. And there was something written by Ben Volen from the Boston Globe saying if they lose the game in Germany Sunday, Belichick might not be on the flight back. And I find that hard to believe that Robert Kraft, after giving him an extension in the off season, and people say he makes $20 million a year, that he's going to fire him before the season's over. That would be way too embarrassing for a guy who's meant so much more to that franchise.
John, I know this might be a bit of a hot take, but I think the CJ Stroud kid might be pretty good.
He might be pretty good. It's interesting, though. He had best game of any quarterback in the NFL this season, rookie or veteran. He had one of the greatest games in the history of rookies. It's hard to believe only 6 rookies in history have come for 5 touchdowns, and 2 of them played for the Texans, Deshaun Watson and now Stroud. And he's making a lot of receivers look really good, but they're helping him. Noah Brown from the Cowboys had a great game. Dalton Schultz from the Cowboys had a great game. But the week before, he had his worst game, 140 yards, no touchdowns, no interceptions, ran for a touchdown. They got beat on a field goal with no time remaining at Carolina. So now they're moving up a weight class. They're going to Cincinnati. And I've never thought that they were a division title contender, and I never thought they were a wild card contender. But now I'm starting to think if they lose to Cincinnati and beat Arizona, they're 5-5. Then they got Jacksonville and Denver here. They waylaid Jacksonville in Jacksonville. So if they can win those 2, give them a 3-game winning streak, we're going to start talking about them as a legitimate playoff contender.
The game he played against and won with 470 yards and all that, I saw Shireen Williams tweet that it's the greatest single-game performance she's ever seen. Would you be in that neighborhood with him?
No. The greatest performance I've seen was in 1990. The Oilers went to Kansas City in December, and it was raining and it was windy. Conditions were terrible. The stands were about half full, and Warren Moon threw for 527 yards, which was second most in history to Norm Van Brocken's 554, I believe, in 1951. That, because of the conditions, this one was indoors, perfect condition, roof closed, and it was impressive. And the reason I think this game was maybe the most impressive I've seen in Houston pro football is because he's a rookie. They have no running game whatsoever. Their linemen are terrible run blockers. He lost his kicker at halftime, had a running back kicking, and he lost 6 players during the game that went out and didn't come back, and they get the ball on their own 46 seconds left. I knew they didn't have a prayer. I walked to the press box and saw all these fans leaving, and then 40 seconds later, they'd won the game on his touchdown pass to rookie Tank Dell's second of the game, and I'm thinking, I just witnessed one of the greatest comebacks I've ever seen, and under the circumstances that I just mentioned, might be the greatest.
John, Josh McDaniels got fired this last week, and the Raiders went out and played inspired under Antonio Pierce. Hunter Renfrow played in the game, a guy they're paying a lot of money, and he just forgot about. Like, all these little things kind of happen. Now, whether the Raiders go back to being the Raiders or not still remains to be seen. Is anybody going to hire Josh McDaniels again to even be a coordinator?
I think somebody may hire him as a coordinator when you've got a strong head coach. But again, he made his reputation coaching who?
Tom
Brady.
Yeah.
And so I couldn't, he was fired during his second season at Denver, fired during his second season with the Raiders. They win a game. They beat some quarterback named Tommy DeVito. Sounds like a mob enforcer. And so they're smoking cigars after the game, just showing how much they hated Josh McDaniels. And McDaniels insisted on David Ziegler from the Patriots being the general manager. There's a story out today that Ziegler did not want Jimmy Garoppolo, fought him over it, but McDaniels had final say and he got it. Now they benched him last week in favor of a rookie, Aiden O'Connell, fourth-round pick from Purdue, and they won the game. I don't think they can sustain it, but there might not have been a happier team in the NFL, kind of like Ding Dong, the Wicked Witch is dead.
Yeah, I heard that story from Jay Glazer about Josh McDaniels saying, all right, everybody air your grievances, and then he immediately regretted that decision.
He said he wasn't the same after that. I guess the players just eviscerated him. And they said he had totally changed after that, was walking around like a zombie, kind of like a dead man walking, and he was. And before Mark Davis, the owner, fired him, he met with kind of a bunch of senior leaders, and of course they wanted him out. It reminded me when John Malkovich was in Kansas City. Players hated him. A bunch of the veterans went to Lamar Hunt's house after a victory, a loss, and aired their grievances, and they fired him, and the Longhorns hired him. And it was just, I think the Longhorns hired him afterward. Maybe he was fired there and the Chiefs hired him. But if you are universally disliked, and it's one thing to be disliked, but if you're disrespected, that is the kiss of death.
John, a fan question. I don't throw these in very often because there's normally not a lot of good to talk about with the Commanders or things in general, but what did you think of their decision and just kind of the rationale behind moving on from Chase Young and Montez Sweat last week?
Craig, I thought they would get rid of one of them because both of them had expiring contracts. They had 4 number 1 picks in their defensive line, and you can't pay all of them the big money. They re-signed one of the tackles, so I was stunned when they got rid of both of them. So they had a bunch of nobodies at defensive end, and they go up and they win at New England. People are getting a big kick out of the Patriots losing, especially at home, because of the way they embarrassed people throughout the 20-year period Brady was there. And so people can't get enough of beating Bill Belichick and Robert Kraft. And I thought Ron Rivera, talk about a dead man walking, he's gone. You got new owners taking over there. Every time they lose, Magic Johnson's tweeting about how bad it was. And so I was happy for Rivera, very class act, but he's going to be looking for a new job.
John McClain, again, Sports Radio 610, Hall of Fame columnist with us on 365 Sports. Dave Aranda, a lot of heat. They're not good. They're 3-6. They lost to Houston, for God's sakes, in overtime. Just from your perspective, John, what you've seen from your alma mater.
I'll tell you this, guys. Dave Aranda 2 years ago was the toast of the town. He didn't just get stupid overnight. They don't have the players. He won with a lot of Matt Rule's players. Now you've got to recruit them. The rules have changed. Baylor's got to get with the NIL program like other schools are, and get better players. And it has to start with the offensive line. If you can't recruit good offensive linemen, you're just spinning your wheel. Whatever happened to Rich Reese? Whatever happened to Monterey Baldwin? Well, you know what? They can't protect the quarterbacks, and they got to get better quarterbacks, and it starts with recruiting. I know a lot of people think it's coaching, but think about that. Did Aranda really get stupid? He couldn't coach in a 2-year period? No. He knows what he's doing. He's just got to do a better job of recruiting. And I can't wait to see those fighting Baylor Bears tonight against Auburn on ESPN. Sick 'em.
There you go. John, thank you so much. John McClain, Sports Radio 610 Hall of Fame columnist on 365 Sports. Yeah, I saw that Shireen Williams